I'm Avery Thompson, and tonight should have been one of the happiest evenings of my life, my 30th birthday dinner at my parents' house in Portland. Instead, my palms are sweating as I slip on my favorite navy sheath dress, trying to steady my racing heart. My brother Ethan, ever the golden child at 33, is already there, flashing his perfect smile while regaling everyone with tales of his latest promotion at the Seattle firm. My fiancé's mother, Helen, hovers nearby in a tailored pantsuit, offering polite congratulations but watching me with furtive curiosity. Just as Mom raises her crystal glass for a toast, my phone buzzes. A single notification lights up the screen. Your employment has been terminated, effective immediately, from my law firm in Seattle. My breath catches. How did Ethan or someone know before I even told my own family? I glance across the table at him. His eyes meet mine, and for the first time tonight, his setup, something inside me tightens. This birthday surprise isn't celebratory. It's a setup. Growing up under the roof of our mid-century bungalow on Northeast Alberta Street, family always felt like a stage, and I was destined to play second fiddle. My father, Dr. Robert Thompson, has been a respected cardiologist at Providence Portland Medical Center for over 30 years. He carries himself with the quiet authority of someone whose decisions quite literally save lives. In our household, his words carried the same weight as his medical jargon. My mother, Patricia, spent her career shaping young minds in the chemistry lab at Grant High School. She's warm and encouraging unless the subject of sibling achievement comes up, at which point her eyes sparkle with pride as she retells Ethan's victory at the state science fair or his valedictorian speech at Roosevelt High. Ethan is 33 now, 3 years older than me, and the product of every parent's proudest dream. By the time he was 10, he was tinkering with his own hover car prototype in Dad's garage. At 14, he coded an algorithm that helped one of Dad's research teams refine heart monitoring data, earning a byline in a medical journal. In high school, Ethan was student body president, debate team captain, and the Seattle Times Youth Innovator of the Year. When he graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with a double major in biomedical engineering and economics, our parents threw a party that felt like a Hollywood premiere. Catered food trucks, live string quartet, 20-foot "Congratulations, Ethan" banner. Meanwhile, I was Avery, the wonderful, creative daughter who painted abstract canvases and hosted mock trials in the backyard. My solid B+ average and leading role in the school play never quite measured up next to his 4 GPA and scientific accolades. I remember junior year English. Ms. Rodriguez pulled me aside. "Avery," she said gently, "you have a gift with words. Maybe not as quantifiable as Ethan's equations, but important in its own right." I tried to believe her, but at every family gathering, even my trophies felt like props complimenting Ethan's main event. When I told my parents I wanted to study law instead of pre-med, their excitement was muted. "Are you sure?" Dad asked, peering over his reading glasses. "Law school is competitive and unstable compared to medical residencies." Mom chimed in. "We just want you to be practical, honey." Practical. A word that haunted me through nights of outlining case briefs, as I wondered whether I truly belonged in the courtroom. Then there's Mia, my younger sister, age 27, now a software engineer in San Francisco. Mia and I have a different dynamic altogether. She never felt the pressure to compete. Our parents lavished equal support on her coding camps and hackathon trophies. When I confided in Mia about feeling eclipsed by Ethan, she'd send me sunrise-colored gifs and late-night FaceTime calls. "You're a badass litigator in the making," she'd whisper as we munched on gelato through our screens. Mia's unwavering faith was the one constant that let me breathe. Into this family portrait stepped Helen Wen, my fiancé Cal's mother. Helen and I met at a dinner party last summer. She's poised, impeccably dressed in tailored silk, with a PhD in behavioral economics and a top role at a Seattle investment firm. From our first conversation, she asked about my career trajectory. Eyebrow arched when I told her just a small litigation boutique. I saw her eyes flick down to my ring finger, assessing whether my salary would cover Cal's future law school debt. The subtext was clear. She hoped her son would end up with someone making at least $120,000, 0 cents a year. My heart clenched as I laughed it off, but that moment lodged in my mind like a call for validation I wasn't sure I could deliver. Our parents unknowingly stoked the flames. Thanksgivings featured toast after toast celebrating Ethan's latest award. Birthdays spotlighted his photo slideshows, while mine ended with polite applause. My own achievements, winning a regional moot court competition, passing the bar on my first try, even getting my first client acquittal, were met with warm hugs and then quickly overshadowed by news of Ethan's next innovation. One Christmas, I enrolled in a high-stakes trial advocacy program in Arizona, funding it with savings and a small scholarship. Returning home, I arrived laden with certificates and a newfound swagger. Mom clapped her hands delightedly until Dad interjected, "Well, that's nice, but I heard Ethan's algorithm just reduced surgical error rates by 15%. The conversation moved on as if my achievement were merely a footnote. Over the years, I internalized the comparisons. I learned to smile when people asked, "How does it feel to be Ethan Thompson's sister?" I learned not to mention my trial wins in mixed company and to redirect conversations toward Mia, or even Mom's own classroom victories. I tried to find pride in my role as the peacemaker during family conflicts, the one who could articulate everyone's feeling. And for a while it worked, until the law firm hired me as a junior associate in Seattle, and I felt a flicker of possibility that I might one day outshine the shadow. In those early months at work, I lived on adrenaline and coffee. My days consisted of deposing witnesses, researching precedent, and refining cross-examination techniques. When I called home to tell them I'd secured pro bono funding for a landmark freedom of speech case, I caught Mom in mid-sentence. "Oh, that's lovely, honey," she said. "But did you hear that Ethan's picking up a fellowship at MIT?" My breath hitched. MIT. Of course. Yet something shifted inside me when I finally stood in court and watched a jury deliver a not guilty verdict to a client who'd once cowered in shame. The exhilaration eclipsed any familial applause. I called Mia afterward, tears in my voice. "This is why I chose law." She texted back a gif of a roaring lion. "That's my sister." Family gatherings continued, but I began to carry myself differently. I stopped downplaying my work and learned to make eye contact. During the rare evenings when Ethan joined a barbecue in our parents' backyard, I'd share anecdotes about legal strategies or unexpected twists in federal procedure. He'd nod politely, maybe for the first time, before launching into his own updates. Still, the unspoken tension lingered. At my bridal shower, guests cooed over my dress. At the same event, a well-meaning aunt asked, "Will Avery continue practicing after the wedding?" as if marriage equated a career stop. I forced a laugh, but caught Helen standing behind me, nodding in agreement. Once again, I felt destined to fall short of some ideal. Through it all, Mia's FaceTime pep talks and the occasional appreciative client letter kept me anchored. But I knew I needed something bigger than modest victories. I needed the kind of opportunity that would force my family and myself to recognize that Avery Thompson litigator wasn't just Ethan Thompson's little sister. I was a force in my own right. That moment arrived, wrapped in Harold Pierce, a retired judge turned consultant. He became my mentor after I impressed him in a moot court workshop. His words, "You make me believe in justice again," echoed in my mind. When he offered me a chance to consult for a high-profile civil rights startup in Seattle with a salary surpassing my firm's annual revenue, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Suddenly, I had the leverage to redefine my narrative. But before unveiling this new chapter, I wanted to solidify who Avery Thompson truly was, beyond the stage set by family expectations. I needed to gather my victories, stack them like evidence, and present a case that even my proudest critics couldn't dismiss. And so, on the eve of my 30th birthday dinner, when that fateful termination notice arrived, I realized my story was only just beginning. The morning after my birthday dinner, I awoke not to celebratory messages, but to the cold glow of an email notification. The subject line read simply, "Position terminated, effective immediately." My heart seized as I opened the message. It was from HR. The litigation department was undergoing budget realignment, and my role was being eliminated. Severance details would follow. I forced myself out of bed and moved through my routine with mechanical precision: shower, coffee, dress. But every step felt weighted, as though I were wading through water. On the commuter rail into downtown Seattle, I replayed last night's interactions. Ethan's brief, unreadable glance when I checked my phone. Helen's polite yet probing question about my firm affiliation. My parents' oblivious toasts to his successes. It all seemed to coalesce into this moment. The first clear sign that my professional standing was far more precarious than I had allowed myself to admit. At my office, Harlow and Benson litigation, something felt off before I even stepped off the elevator. Our lobby, usually abuzz with associates and staff, was uncharacteristically quiet. Partners in tailored suits drifted past me in small cliques, their voices low. I made my way to my desk, where the emptiness of my inbox seemed to mock me. No client updates, no friendly ping from my mentor, Clara, just that single HR email blinking up at me. I managed to compose a tight-lipped smile for 2 depositions I had to prepare, but every time I glanced at the clock, my pulse sped up. My carefully organized case files felt suddenly fragile. I reminded myself I'd built my reputation on thorough research and persuasive argument. I wasn't going to let a single email define me. Then came the forwarding misfire that confirmed my worst suspicions. During a lull in my calendar, I opened my personal Gmail and found a message forwarded to my brother's Seattle address. The firm's official severance packet, addressed to Mr. E. Thompson. The PDF spelled out my end date, benefits cutoff, and a draft non-disclosure agreement. I felt a jolt of anger and confusion. Why would HR send it to Ethan, of all people? I drafted a quick note to Mia before the train reached my stop. I just got severance docs, and they went to Ethan's email. Something's very wrong. Her response was immediate and fierce. I'm on it. Rather than linger in my cubicle, I booked the next available slot with HR and called Mia back. We agreed she'd tap her contacts for an employment attorney, while I would prepare the questions I needed to ask. Had I been targeted? Was this a mistake or a deliberate move to push me out? In HR, I sat across from Clara, who looked genuinely torn. She confirmed the termination notice had been issued yesterday evening and apologized, but offered no clear explanation. When I asked why my severance packet landed in Ethan's inbox, she mumbled something about an automated distribution list and promised to investigate. I pressed for details on the budget rationale and whether colleagues from my practice group were similarly affected. She could only repeat that it was cost numeral and offered me a confidential exit interview. I declined and left her office with more questions than answers. By mid-afternoon, whispers had begun to ripple through the office. A partner paused in my doorway to say politely, "Best of luck with whatever's next," before disappearing down the hall. A paralegal I'd mentored slipped a sympathetic glance my way, but their eyes betrayed the unspoken question. Why me? I forced myself to focus on my afternoon hearing, but every argument felt hollow. When the judge asked a clarifying question, I answered on autopilot, my mind preoccupied with the prospect of updating my resume, securing health benefits, and finding new references. During my lunch break, I called Clara again. She told me the forwarding error had been corrected, but she still couldn't explain why. I thanked her and hung up, my frustration simmering beneath a veneer of courtesy. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I allowed myself to feel the full weight of panic. My office felt smaller, the walls inching closer. I closed my eyes and steadied my breath, reminding myself of every trial I'd won, every client I'd championed. This wasn't over. On the ride home, I reviewed my options. I could challenge the termination based on process irregularities. After all, automated notices sent to the wrong person suggested sloppy HR practices. I could negotiate a better severance package. I could even consider taking the firm to claim unfair dismissal. But each path required information I didn't yet have. First, I needed legal counsel, and that's where Mia would come in. Back in my apartment, I dropped my bag and sank onto the couch. Photos on the nearby shelf caught my eye. Me with Mia at our college graduation, me posed confidently in front of the courthouse after winning my first motion. They reminded me who I really was. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to a labor attorney recommended by Mia's network, summarizing the situation and requesting a consultation by week's end. Then I texted Ethan, "We need to talk about that email." I hesitated before hitting send, fingers hovering over the keys. Part of me dreaded his response if he had indeed received my severance packet. What did that mean about his role in this? But I pressed send anyway. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the rhythmic hum of the apartment building fading behind my thoughts. My career, my identity had always been intertwined with my capacity to argue, to prevail. Now, for the first time, I was on the defensive in my own life. And while fear curled in my chest, so did a determined spark. Avery Thompson had faced tougher opponents in court. This time, however, the adversary was closer, maybe even too close to home. As sleep finally claimed me, I made a silent vow tomorrow I would meet with that attorney, demand clarity from HR, and confront Ethan. I would reclaim control of my narrative, step out of the shadows of automated memos and whispered rumors, and prove that I am more than a line on a budget spreadsheet. This was only the beginning of the fight for my career and my self-respect, and I was ready to wage it on every front. 2 days after the termination notice, I arranged to meet Ethan and Dad at our favorite riverside cafe, Riverbend Bistro, hoping for clarity, or at least some semblance of support. The morning drizzle turned the Willamette's current steely gray as I approached the glass-walled patio where they'd already claimed a corner table. Ethan sat with his usual upright posture, tie perfectly knotted, scanning the menu like a practiced executive. Dad, in a soft blue button-down, looked uneasy, as if he knew the conversation to come would tip the steady balance of our family's facade. I settled into the wicker chair and took a steadying breath. "Thanks for meeting me," I began. "I need to understand what's happening with my job." Ethan glanced up, brow furrowed. "I'm surprised you even agreed to sit down," he said coolly. "You know how sensitive for us it was to learn about your layoff. HR messed up. They emailed your severance packet to my work email by mistake." Dad cleared his throat. "Honey, your brother's right. It was just an administrative error." I frowned. "An error that targeted me specifically?" I slid the printed severance memo across the table. This was meant for A. Thompson. It landed in your inbox, Ethan. That's not a random glitch. Ethan sighed and leaned back, crossing his arms. Look, I'm sorry you lost your job, but you know our firm has been under pressure. They started with the junior associates. You fit the profile. I lifted my chin. I'm not a junior associate anymore. I'm a lead litigator on 2 high-stakes cases. And you've got to admit it's suspicious that it was my packet delivered to your email, especially after you met with HR the day before and asked about budget issues in litigation. Ethan's color shifted. He opened his mouth, then closed it, glancing at Dad. His jaw tightened. I felt a surge of vindication. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. I excused myself and checked the screen. A text from Lindsay, my former paralegal at Harlow and Benson. Avery, sorry to bother, but I was in HR's system today. They flagged your role for elimination on Monday. Before your birthday dinner, someone high-level requested it. My pulse quickened. I read the message aloud. See, this was premeditated. Ethan's eyes narrowed. I didn't request anything. That's ridiculous. I leaned forward, voice low. Dad, you deserve to know the truth. Ethan called HR last Friday. He expressed concern about litigation headcount and explicitly asked which associates were most expendable. My throat tightened as I spoke the words I'd recorded from the firm's internal town hall meeting. Ethan's voice. Recording played. Let's see who's really pulling their weight. I'll take your list of suggested names. I hit play on my phone. Ethan froze when his own voice echoed softly from the speaker. Dad reached out, his fork clattering onto the saucer. Ethan. Dad's voice trembled. Is this true? Ethan's face went pale. He pressed a hand to his forehead and looked away. The barista refilled my coffee in the background, but it felt like the rest of the world had gone silent. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he stammered. I thought HR would gnash teeth over budget cuts. I never imagined they'd actually cut you. I closed my eyes, fighting rising anger. You gambled with my career, our reputation. You used Dad's influence, your position at Meridian Bank, to engineer my dismissal. Dad's shoulders sagged. Ethan, why? Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I thought I was protecting the family balance. If you kept climbing, the comparisons would only get worse. I wanted to preserve my edge. I recoiled as if struck. By sabotaging me? He looked at me, eyes rimmed red. I didn't see another way. I thought the firm might reconsider if I didn't push them. A strange silence followed. I felt my vision blur, not with tears, but with disbelief. I tasted bitterness on my tongue. The brother who'd led my science fair team, who'd taught me to code in his garage, had betrayed me in the cruelest fashion. Then my phone buzzed again, an incoming call from Helen. Instinctively, I muted the recording, suppressing my shaking hands. I declined the call. Ethan smirked. Even Helen's checking in. I turned to Dad, voice soft. This isn't just about me losing my job. It's about trust and how far you, Ethan, were willing to go. Dad lowered his gaze. Son, we raised you to succeed, but not like this. Ethan swallowed. I know I crossed a line. I'm sorry. To both of you. I exhaled, the confrontation's adrenaline ebbing into weariness. Sorry doesn't fix my career. I gathered my things, preparing to leave. At the cafe door, I paused. "One more thing," I said. "I'm consulting an employment attorney tomorrow. I suggest you talk to one too, because I intend to challenge this decision." Ethan's lips parted. I cut him off. "Don't. Just know this. I'm not backing down." As I stepped into the drizzle, I felt the betrayal settle heavy in my chest, but also a strange clarity. The real fight was just beginning, and I'd uncovered my brother's hand before it could deal a final blow. Back at home, I called Nia. "It's worse than we thought," I said, recounting the confession and the recording. Her voice hardened. "We'll prepare the case. You'll get your job back, or the compensation you deserve." That night, I lay awake listening to the rain, replaying Ethan's voice and the sting of his apology. The fracture in our family was deep, but so is my resolve. I wouldn't let betrayal define me. Instead, I'd use it to fuel my next move, proving once and for all that Avery Thompson could stand on her own merits, even against her own blood. When I finally made it home that evening, the drizzle had turned into a steady rain, as if the sky itself mourned the rupture in my family. I closed the door behind me and dropped onto the sofa, still gripping my umbrella like an anchor. The cafe confrontation with Ethan replayed on a loop in my mind. His voice admitting he'd engineered my ouster, Dad's horrified stare, and the cold realization that the person I once looked up to most had betrayed me. I curled into a ball, wrapping my arms around myself. In the back of my throat, something snapped. I felt the weight of every slight I'd endured, every toast to Ethan's successes, every question from Helen about my plan B, every whispered comparison by Mom to her golden boy. I'd always held a measure of pride in my independence, but tonight that pride shattered. Tears flowed freely before I even realized I was crying. They blurred the framed certificates on my wall. The bar admission, the moot court award, the congratulatory letter from a grateful client. All of it seemed so meaningless now. I sank to the floor, back against the couch, and let the sobs come. "I trusted him," I whispered into my knees. My own brother. My phone buzzed, but I ignored it. I didn't want calls or text, just a moment of raw grief. The room felt cold. The familiar furnishings suddenly alien. I pressed my forehead to the carpet and let the silence swallow me. After what felt like hours, I staggered to my feet and shuffled to the kitchen. The overhead light cast harsh shadows against the stainless steel appliances. I opened the fridge and stared at the leftover salad I'd planned to eat for lunch. Without thinking, I tossed the container into the trash and grabbed a bottle of red wine from the shelf, only to spill half of it over the counter in my clumsy grasp. The acrid scent of wine hit my nose, and I closed my eyes against the sting. I wanted to rage, to scream at Ethan and Dad and Helen and the firm, anyone who'd ever made me feel small. But I was too numb. Instead, I poured the rest of the wine into a chipped coffee mug and collapsed at my kitchen table. That's when my phone buzzed again. I looked down to see Helen Ungeinen calling. For a moment, my hand hovered over the decline button. Anger flared at her specter from last night, her cool appraisal of me at a party I'd once hoped to dazzle. I tapped ignore and set the phone face down. I stared at the mug of wine, its surface rippling as I exhaled. "You've got nothing left," I muttered to the empty room. "No job, no trust, no fight." Then, a small voice inside me slapped me awake. "That's bullshit." I slammed my palm on the table. The red liquid lapped against the rim. With shaking fingers, I flipped the phone over and called Jordan, my law school best friend and unofficial therapist. The line rang twice before she picked up, bright and energetic even at 10:30 p.m. "Avers, you okay? You sounded off earlier." I closed my eyes, swallowing a hiccup of emotion. "I'm not okay, Jord. Ethan betrayed me. I lost my job. I feel like I'm drowning." Her voice softened. "Oh, babe, sit down, breathe. Tell me everything." So I did. I recounted the HR email, the severance packet sent to his inbox, the recording at the cafe, and the raw betrayal. As I spoke, my tears slowed, replaced by a steady ache in my chest. Jordan listened without interrupting, her presence warm through the phone's speaker. When I finished, Jordan sighed. "You've been knocked down, but you're still standing. That's important. Tomorrow, we'll find you an employment attorney. We'll petition to void that termination based on the process mess-up, and we'll dig into Meridian Bank's internal emails to see how deep Ethan's involvement goes." I swallowed hard. I feel so weak. "Weak is okay for a night," she replied firmly. "But remember, you've built your career on resilience. You've persuaded juries, out-argued partners, and outworked associates. This is a different battlefield, but the same lawyering skills apply. You just need to marshal your evidence and make your case." Her words felt like a lifeline. I took a sip of wine, halfway decent, fruity with a harsh finish, and let Jordan's confidence seep into me. As we hung up, my phone buzzed with a new text from Helen Undy. My thumb hovered before I opened it. "Helen, Avery. I know I haven't always been supportive, but I heard about what happened. If you need any help, financial or otherwise, please let me know." I blinked at the message. Her offer felt unexpected, confusing. After our tense exchange at the birthday dinner, I had written her off as another critic in my life. But her text carried genuine concern. I typed back without overthinking. "Me. Thank you, Helen. I appreciate it. Let's talk tomorrow." I set the phone aside and returned to the couch, the mug of wine now half empty. For the first time in hours, I let myself believe that help might come from unexpected places, and that not everyone in my world was an antagonist. As midnight approached, I guided my thoughts back to what Jordan had said. Gather evidence, line up legal support, and confront this head-on. I thought of the recording on my phone, the forwarded severance packet, the memo from HR. Each piece was a weapon in my arsenal. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling the faint tremor of determination beneath the exhaustion. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we start the fight." With that promise, I stood and walked to my bedroom. I changed into pajamas and slid under the covers. The rain outside had tapered to a soft patter, and I listened to its steady rhythm as sleep finally claimed me. In the quiet darkness, I held on to two truths. I had lost something precious, my trust in my brother and my job security. But I still had my conviction and my skills. And I wasn't alone. Between Mia's unwavering faith, Jordan's fierce loyalty, and even the unexpected olive branch from Helen, I had a coalition ready to help me reclaim what was taken. As I drifted off, I let go of the tears and kept the resolve. Avery Thompson might be battered tonight, but tomorrow she would rise, and she would fight back on her own terms. The next morning, I woke before dawn to the steady patter of rain against my window. For the first time in days, I didn't lie in bed replaying worst-case scenarios. Instead, I reached over to my nightstand, opened the notepad bearing scribbled timelines and audio timestamps, and read it through again. Each line, HR's terse termination notice, the forwarded severance packet sent to Ethan, the recording of his budget request, was a reminder not of my failure, but of the case I needed to build. I dressed quickly in dark jeans and a simple cream sweater, fastening my hair back so it wouldn't distract me. On my way out, I grabbed my laptop, a copy of the severance memo, and the USB drive holding Ethan's recording. I stepped into the crisp Seattle air, the remains of last night's rain lingering on the sidewalks. My sneakers sloshed through puddles as I walked toward Laurelhurst Park, where the looping trail around the lake would give me time to think before the day's work began. Halfway around the water, I found a bench beneath a towering Douglas fir. I set my laptop on my lap and typed a carefully worded email to Marissa Chen, the employment attorney whose card I'd picked up at the Bar Association mixer months ago. I summarized the facts, my abrupt termination, the HR process irregularities, and the unmistakable link to Ethan's request. Then, with deliberate calm, I added, I believe I have grounds for wrongful termination and wish to I clicked send and felt a surge of relief. No longer was I a passive victim, but someone actively pursuing justice. After a long sip of lukewarm coffee from my thermos, I closed the laptop and slid the documents into my bag. A jogger passed by, giving me an encouraging nod, and I realized how small moments of anonymous solidarity could power you forward. I finished my circuit of the lake, each step reminding me that even long journeys begin with one determined decision. By mid-morning, I was seated at Lillian's Cafe, clutching the lavender latte that had gotten me through late-night study marathons in law school. I spread out my papers. The printed HR memo, the chain of forwarded emails, and a rough timeline in my notebook, and reviewed them once more. My pen hovered over the page as I sketched arrows linking Ethan's request in HR on Friday afternoon to the termination notice 2 days later. I knew that to convince any judge or arbitrator, I needed a clear causal narrative supported by dates, names, and timestamps. Lillian herself bustled over to check in. When she noticed my organized chaos, she set down an extra biscotti without asking. For clarity, she winked. I smiled at her kindness. Sometimes, small gestures from unlikely allies matter most. That afternoon, I called Lindsay, my former paralegal at Harlow and Benson. She agreed to meet at a quiet co-working space near Pike Place Market. Over iced tea and whispering customers, she confirmed her memory. HR had flagged the litigation department for cuts before my birthday, and someone, most likely at Ethan's request, had specifically identified my file for termination. She even forwarded me an internal HR calendar invite that included Review A. Thompson on the agenda. With her help, I now had third-party corroboration that HR's decision was neither random nor purely budget-driven. As dusk settled, I walked toward my parents' house. Dad was in the garage, tinkering under the hood of his old VW bus. I watched his steady hands, recalling the nights he'd coached me through complex case outlines. Dad, I need your help, I said, handing him my phone. I played him the recording of Ethan's voice requesting names for layoffs. His face fell, and he closed his eyes as the last words echoed. I'm sorry, sweetheart, he murmured. I didn't know he'd go this far. He promised to comb through his emails and texts immediately to find any written proof of their conversation. Having his support, his willingness to turn those memories into evidence, felt like a lifeline. Back in my apartment, I spread everything on the dining table. The HR memo, my notes, Lindsay's calendar invite, and Dad's printed emails. I drafted the outline of a demand letter, a concise statement of facts, a clear articulation of the wrongdoing, and a request for either reinstatement or a fair severance plus a public correction of the record. Then I paused. I pictured myself standing in a courtroom, poised and confident. I heard the judge's respectful tone as I explained how a junior associate's career had been derailed by a privileged insider and how justice demanded redress. That vision steadied me as I typed the document header: demand for remediation and restoration of position. Just as I clicked save, my phone buzzed. Marisa Chen's office had responded. Could we schedule a call tomorrow morning? I felt a thrill of validation. I was no longer on the defensive. I typed back a polite confirmation, then leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The momentum I'd been missing was finally building. Later that evening, I video called Mia. She beamed when I told her the updates, the evidence lineup, Lindsay's corroboration, Dad's email threads, and the demand letter draft. "You're killing it, sis," she said, her pride in me shining through the screen. "They won't know what hit them." Her confidence in me was contagious. Before bed, I sorted my papers into 2 piles, to send and to keep on file. I slipped everything into a sturdy binder marked with today's date. As I clicked the binder shut, I felt the shift. This was no longer chaos and fear, but strategy and resolve. I set the binder on my desk, where it would be visible every morning, a reminder of the fight I'd chosen. Lying in bed that night, I replayed the day's victories, transforming fury into action, securing support from trusted allies, and taking concrete steps toward restoring my career. The bruises, emotional and professional, would take time to heal, but each one fueled my determination. I closed my eyes on one final thought, whispered into the darkness. Avery Thompson fights back. And tomorrow, I would prove it. 2 days after organizing my evidence, I arrived at Harlow and Benson's downtown offices for the meeting I'd demanded. The conference room on the 17th floor overlooked Elliott Bay and was awash in late morning light as Clara from HR, the managing partner Jonathan Brooks, my attorney Marisa Chen on speakerphone, and Ethan Thompson himself took their seats around the oaken table. I stood at the head of the table with my laptop, binder, and printed demand for remediation letter laid out before me. Calmly, I walked them through my timeline. Ethan's recorded request to HR on Friday afternoon, the HR calendar entry review A. Thompson the following Monday, my birthday dinner that evening, and the terse termination memo 2 days later. Heads turned as I played Ethan's own voice, asking HR to identify expendable litigation associate. Jonathan exchanged uneasy glances with Clara, and when Clara attempted to dismiss the matter as a necessary budget cut, I interjected, pointing out that although the department had reorganized, my solo elimination suggested improper favoritism. Marissa's clear, unwavering voice over the speakerphone underscored my legal position. I had suffered reputational and financial harm and sought either immediate reinstatement with back pay or a full severance plus a public correction. Before the partners could regroup, Aunt Karen, my father's sister, stepped in with her own resignation letter from the firm, recounting an identical pattern of sudden layoff. Her presence and testimony about the firm's past missteps tipped the balance. Jonathan conceded that procedure must be reformed. When I outlined 3 remedies, reinstatement retroactive to my termination date, a formal apology to clients, and an internal review to safeguard HR, Clara and Jonathan nodded. By the end of the meeting, I was reinstated as senior associate, with back pay and benefits restored, and they agreed to publish both an apology letter and an internal memo about new HR safeguards. Ethan offered a hushed apology, which I accepted quietly. The moment was about closure, not spectacle. As I left the skyscraper lobby later that afternoon, I felt liberated. What had begun as a fight for my job had become a turning point in my career, not just recovering what I'd lost, but reshaping my firm's culture and proving, above all, that I control my own narrative. It's side story / bonus insight, 550 words. Amid the whirlwind of HR battles and family confrontations, I found an unexpected source of wisdom tucked away in an heirloom my grandmother left behind. She'd been a reporter for the Chicago Tribune in the 1950s, long before most women entered newsrooms. After her retirement, she slipped her old press badge and a worn leather notebook into a cedar jewelry box, which Mom later passed to me. And one quiet Saturday, I sat on my balcony overlooking Lake Washington and opened that notebook. Its yellowed pages brimmed with handwritten observations, notes from bustling city council hearings, brief interviews in dimly lit coffee shops, and even sketches of courthouse facades. In the margins, Grandma had scribbled bits of advice in looping cursive. Listen first. The story reveals itself in silent moments. Never let anyone silence the voice of truth. Courage is asking the hard questions. Reading those lines, I realized how closely her ethos mirrored my own fight. Just as she pursued transparency in the political arena, I was seeking clarity and fairness in my professional world. Her courage in challenging power structures, often as the lone woman at the press table, felt like a direct inheritance, urging me forward when I'd stumbled in self-doubt. Encouraged by her example, I started incorporating small listening sessions at work. Instead of dictating my team's assignments, I invited input from junior associates over coffee in the firm's library. I asked them to share not just case updates, but any frustrations they'd encountered with staffing or HR processes. Those conversations uncovered simmering concerns, unofficial preferred divisions, unclear evaluation criteria, and a reluctance among some partners to embrace diverse perspectives. Armed with these insights, I brought proposals to the firm's HR Oversight Committee, standardized evaluation rubrics, anonymous feedback channels, and quarterly Ask Me Anything sessions with leadership. It wasn't grand reform, but each measure echoed Grandma's principle of listening first and speaking truth to power. On the family front, I shared my grandmother's notebook with Dad and Aunt Karen during a Sunday brunch at my parents' house. Seeing Grandma's elegant handwriting sparked memories of their own mother, stories of how she balanced deadlines, skepticism of her male editors, and the pride she felt when her articles led to city ordinances improving public safety. Dad's eyes glistened as he read her words, and Aunt Karen nodded, recalling how Grandma's persistence inspired her to challenge her own sudden layoff years ago. That shared moment of reflection transformed our dynamic. Beyond the legal victory, we connected on a deeper level, recognizing that the struggle for fairness wasn't just a personal battle, but part of a multi-generational pursuit of justice. Grandma's legacy became a living guide, reminding us that meaningful change often starts with asking the hard questions and listening to every answer. As I move forward, whether mentoring my team, revising firm policies, or navigating new alliances, I carry her notebook close by. Its pages whisper, "Stay curious, stay courageous, and never let bureaucracy mute your voice." In honoring Grandma's side story, I found both solace and a blueprint for lasting impact, one question at a time. In the days following my reinstatement, the aftershocks of Ethan's betrayal rippled through both our family and the firm. Word of the impropriety and its resolution spread quietly at first, partners exchanging concerned glances in corridors, associates trading whispered comments in the break room. But soon it reached formal channels. Harlow and Benson's executive committee convened an ethics review, prompted by my request for procedural safeguards and Aunt Karen's corroboration of past missteps. At the heart of the inquiry was one question: had Ethan Thompson abused his influence to manipulate HR decisions? Clara from HR was forthright in her testimony. She explained that HR's automated processes should have prevented unilateral requests from executives. Yet, Ethan's standing with Meridian Bank, a significant firm client, had circumvented normal review. The committee's report concluded that he had indeed inappropriately leveraged familial privilege, resulting in the wrongful termination of a valued associate. The sanctions were swift and public within the firm. Ethan was removed from all HR and partner-level committees for 6 months, stripped of his voting rights on staffing decisions, and required to complete a formal course in corporate ethics sponsored by the Washington State Bar Association. A concise memo, signed by Jonathan Brooks and Clara, was sent firm-wide. In light of recent findings, Mr. Ethan Thompson has been barred from participation in any personnel or HR matters pending completion of ethical leadership training. Harlow and Benson reaffirms its commitment to fairness, transparency, and the equitable treatment of all associates. Associates I'd mentored nodded approvingly as I passed their offices, offering murmured congratulations. Even the paralegals who once avoided my cubicle now paused to smile and say, "Glad to have you back, Avery." The visible reprimand of a high-performing partner underscored that no one was above the firm's values, a precedent that reshaped the office atmosphere overnight. At home, Dad and Aunt Karen arranged a small family town hall in our parents' living room. Seated in a circle before the crackling fireplace, we confronted the personal fallout. Mom dabbed her eyes as Ethan delivered a carefully prepared apology. "I let ambition blind me," he admitted, voice wavering with remorse. "I betrayed my sister and compromised my own integrity. I will spend the next months earning back your trust." Mia, who had flown in from San Francisco, surprised everyone by standing and embracing him. "We all make mistakes," she said quietly. "It's what we do afterwards that matters." Watching her forgive him so readily, I felt a complex mixture of relief and lingering hurt. Ethan's contrition was sincere, but rebuilding trust would be a slow process. To reinforce accountability, I proposed a family pledge of transparency. We each wrote down one commitment on colored index cards. Ethan's read, "No more secrets. I share all pertinent information openly." I wrote, "I will advocate for fairness even when it's uncomfortable." Mom's and Dad's cards echoed similar themes of mutual respect and open communication. We taped them to the mantel as a visible reminder of our renewed bonds. Back at the firm, Ethan threw himself into his ethics training with unexpected vigor. I visited the training seminar as an invited guest speaker, an opportunity to turn this fiasco into a teachable moment. Addressing a room of partners and associates, I spoke about the importance of equal application of policy and the perils of unchecked influence. When Ethan later shared my handouts with his classmates and publicly acknowledged me as the impetus for his learning, colleagues nodded appreciatively. His willingness to learn in front of peers earned him a measure of professional redemption. Despite these strides, some scars remained. Rumors flared periodically that clients had questioned my reliability after the term wrongful termination circulated in industry newsletters. I countered these whispers by hosting a client appreciation reception catered by my favorite local bistro, where I personally thanked clients for their loyalty. I outlined my vision for strengthening Harlow and Benson's litigation practice and introduced the new HR protocols I'd championed. By owning the narrative, I turned potential damage into an opportunity to reinforce my competence and leadership. Meanwhile, Ethan's own practice benefited from introspection. Freed from HR obligations, he took on a mentorship role for incoming associates, pairing younger lawyers with senior partners and leading ethics and finance workshops. Colleagues who once viewed him as aloof began to see a more thoughtful, conscientious side. I didn't forget the betrayal, but I recognized the genuine effort he made to restore faith in his character. One evening, I found myself alone at my desk, finishing up a brief for my latest motion. A knock on the door revealed Ethan holding 2 mugs of coffee. He offered one to me without comment. I took it, surprised. "Thanks," I said. He nodded. "Can I say again that I'm sorry, and thank you for not leaving the firm when I forced this?" I sipped the coffee, its warmth reminding me of countless late-night strategy sessions we once collaborated on. "I'm here because I believe in the work, and because redemption is possible." He smiled, tentative but hopeful. "I hope one day we can truly move past this." I set the mug down. "Time will tell, but I can see you're trying." In that quiet moment, I felt a cautious optimism. The antagonist's downfall had been dramatic, a partner publicly sanctioned, a family's trust shaken, but the real victory lay in how everyone chose to rebuild. Ethan's journey from privilege-abusing insider to humbled mentor showed that accountability, when embraced, can transform even the deepest betrayals. As I closed my office at the end of another productive day, I glanced at the framed ethics pledge taped above my desk. Advocate for fairness. Speak truth to power. That commitment had guided me through my darkest hours and now illuminated a path not only for me, but for my brother, my family, and the entire firm. In falling, Ethan had been forced to confront his flaws. In rising, he and all of us had become stronger and more united. Sunday evening found our extended family gathered around the long oak table in my parents' dining room, the aroma of rosemary garlic roast chicken mingling with the faint scent of my grandmother's lavender sachets tucked into the linen napkins. It was the first time in months that nearly everyone, Mom, Dad, Mia, Ethan, Aunt Karen, and even Helen, shared a meal without tension or unspoken glances. The flickering candlelight danced across the pledge cards we'd taped to the mantel, promises of transparency, fairness, and mutual respect. When I rose to make a toast, I felt a quiet confidence settle over me. "Thank you all for being here," I began, voice steady. "This dinner isn't just to celebrate my reinstatement or the new policies we've put in place at the firm. It's to honor how far we've come as a family." I nodded toward Ethan. "Especially considering the hole I fell into because of his mistake. I want to acknowledge his hard work to rebuild trust, both at Harlow and Benson, and with each of us here." A soft murmur of agreement rippled around the table as Ethan's tentative smile met mine. I paused, gathering my thoughts. These past months have taught me that success isn't measured solely by titles, salaries, or victories in court. It's measured by resilience, the ability to stand up after being knocked down, and by integrity, doing what's right, even when it's hard. I see those qualities in each of you. I gestured to Mia, who squeezed my hand and smiled encouragement, to Dad and Aunt Karen, who championed transparency, and to Helen, whose unexpected support reminded me that allies can emerge from surprising places. We lifted our glasses of sparkling cider in unison. "To resilience, integrity, and family," I concluded. The soft clink of glass echoed my sense of closure and new beginnings. After dinner, we moved to the living room, where Mom had arranged a small slideshow of family photos. Then and now. There we saw a progression. Childhood birthdays where Ethan's cake towered over mine, awkward teens recitals overshadowed by his science fair trophies, and finally, a recent snapshot of Ethan handing me my reinstatement binder in a firm lobby, bathed in morning light. Each image mapped our journey from competition and comparison to mutual respect. As the slideshow ended, Aunt Karen stood. Our grandmother always said, "Every story needs a sequel. This," she said, gesturing to the room, "is ours." She handed us each an envelope. Inside were plane tickets for a family trip to Maui in November, a promise of shared adventure beyond courtrooms and boardrooms. Gasps of delight filled the room as we read the destination and dates. I looked around at everyone's faces, my mother's tears of joy, Dad's proud grin, Mia's excited chatter, and even Ethan's contented silence. I felt the last tendrils of resentment slip away, replaced by genuine affection. Our family drama had been fierce, but it had forged a deeper bond and a new understanding of success. Not as a solitary peak, but as a landscape we traversed together. Over the next hour, we shared stories of our childhood misadventures, Mom's accidental dye job that turned me bright green in 3rd grade, Dad's mispronunciation of liability at my high school graduation, and Ethan's catastrophic chemistry set explosion in the garage. Laughter knit us closer, proving that vulnerability and humor can heal wounds sharper than any legal brief. Later, I found myself alone with Dad on the back porch, the night air perfumed by gardenias. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm proud of the lawyer you've become," he said quietly. "But tonight, I'm prouder of the woman." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "Thanks, Dad. I learned that a career is important, but it's our relationships that define our legacy." Inside, Mia and Ethan were comparing Maui snorkeling itineraries, and Aunt Karen was teasing Helen about being the official trip planner. I smiled to myself. This was the resolution I'd hoped for. Family members working together, supporting each other's strengths, and building memories beyond past rivalries. That night, as I packed the suitcase that held my trial robes and a few casual outfits for our upcoming trip, I reflected on the lessons I'd learned. That trust must be earned and can be rebuilt through accountability. That speaking truth to power is a professional duty and a personal practice. And that success is a journey of continual growth, guided by integrity, compassion, and resilience. On the morning of our flight, my grandmother's old reporter's notebook lay on the hotel nightstand, open to her motto, "Courage is asking the hard questions." I traced her handwriting with my fingertip and whispered a private thanks for the gift of perspective she'd left behind. As our plane lifted off Maui's coastline into the golden sunrise, I gazed out at the island's emerald peaks and turquoise waters. I felt, truly, that a new chapter had begun, not just for my career or my family, but for the story I would continue to write with honesty and heart. The family drama behind us served not as a scar, but as a testament to what we could overcome and what we could build together when we chose respect over rivalry and connection over competition. In the end, I understood that every resolution is a lesson, and every lesson a bridge to the next adventure. And with that, I settled back in my seat, ready to embrace whatever came next, confident that this time I would soar on my own merits, but never alone. Have you ever faced a betrayal that tested both your career and your closest relationships? Share your story below. And if this journey resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our community for more tales of resilience and triumph.